Hi everybody and welcome back to Geektube Central and our Game of Thrones Season 6 review, with this being episode 6. Now we're more than halfway through the season and this episode's called Blood of My Blood, and as most people already know because it's been brought up through the Dothraki scenes, that Blood of My Blood is what a blood rider who pledges his life and blood to his call, and that basically leads into, Dany's storyline, and even to do with blood between other relations in Game of Thrones. And speaking of blood relations, we've got the first scene I'm going to cover is Sam and Gilly, and they're travelling to Hornhill. Now, we've heard about Hornhill before. When Sam first went to the Night's Watch, he said, I was the heir, but my father didn't think I was suitable, and he decided that I either had to take the black or he was going to kill me. So basically we knew from a long time ago that his father wasn't very nice. But then when you see them arrive by carriage, you see that in the style of the southern sort of castles, it is massive. And obviously Sam comes from a lot of money, and the seat here at Hornhill is absolutely massive, and we love Sam for who he is, but you realise as soon as he comes back to Hornhill the dynamic really changes. And when they arrive at Hornhill, the mother and the sister are really accommodating, and they accept Sam and Gilly with little Sam, and the sister takes Gilly to go get washed up, and this is the first time we've ever seen her clean. Now, I'm not saying she was like completely dirty or ugly like that. She was just one-dimensional to me, one note, just all grey and brown and stuff. So she gets cleaned up, and it's quite funny seeing her being all awkward walking in this dress, but she looks lovely. And they're sitting at dinner, and the mother and the sister are absolutely lovely. We even see Sam's brother, who is now the actual heir, now that Sam basically gave up his rights. His name's Dickon. But the father, Randyll Tully, he literally has the face of a bulldog chewing a wasp. He is just not for it at all, and he basically is thumbing his nose, and Sam's trying to interact with his brother and his father by asking about, was this the meat that they're being served from this morning? They're like, no, it's not been hung up long enough yet. And in the sort of talking between them all, there's like this uneasiness, and the lovely sister says, I wish I knew how to hunt. I heard that northern girls are allowed to hunt, and they actually mention House Umber and how the daughters of that house were taught how to hunt. And he says that would be great if my father could do that. And you just know he was not for that. And during the meal, they're asking questions about, what is Sam doing? Does he hunt? And he says, yeah, we hunt, but it's mostly rabbits and squirrels and stuff. And the father does not look impressed. And Gilly, being absolutely lovely, is trying to stick up for Sam by saying, he's a great guy. He actually killed a Finn, and he's killed White Walkers. And at that point, because she's kind of gave herself away, that's when he realises that she's a wildling. And at that point he basically says, she can stay and she can cook and be a kitchen maid or whatever, but you're going to leave, and I don't want you to ever come back. And Sam at first was going to leave her there, and they have a kiss and they're saying goodbye, and I remember thinking, oh Sam, you shouldn't have left her. And then 2 seconds later he comes back and he's like, that's it, we're going. And as they go downstairs, the Valyrian sword, which actually the father brought up, he says, see this sword, this is supposed to go to the male heir, the firstborn son and whatever. And basically he's rubbing it in that Sam will never get this sword, because the Valyrian swords are special no matter where in the kingdom you are. But in the end Sam's like, we're gonna go, I'm taking this sword, it should be mine anyway. She says, he'll probably come after you, and Sam says, let him try. Now, I know a lot of people haven't really enjoyed the Sam and Gilly storyline, probably because they're genuinely nice people, but actually I really like that. There's no backstabbing, there's no underhandedness, you don't have to pick out what he says and what the different meanings are. He's just genuinely a nice person, and actually this was a well received scene. It was nice seeing him interacting with his family, but then you understand with a father like that, even though he had to give up his rights as a Tarly heir, it was great that he did, because we would never have known Sam. And Sam, for as much as people have a lot to say about him, he actually has been quite significant. And now we know that he is, for good or for bad, he's going to take Gilly and Sam to the Citadel, and I can't wait to find that out, because it just seems like it's taken a long time to get to the Citadel, but I'm really looking forward to it. Right, so we come to these King's Landing scenes, and I have to admit I was really quite taken aback, because the outcome was not how I read it at all, because they've been building this up for weeks. So it basically starts with Tommen meeting the High Sparrow in the sept, and he's lighting a candle, probably to the mother, and he basically tells the High Sparrow his worries about how the populace will treat her on her Walk of Atonement, and he gets a bit upset and raises his voice to the High Sparrow, and then the High Sparrow says to him, "Don't worry about it, everything will be fine. Would you actually like to go see her?" And of course he does, because you dangle a carrot in front of someone, they're going to take it. And so he goes to meet Margaery, and she's in that little chapel area, and she's reading the book. She's obviously reading the aspects of the Seven, and she seems completely different. Now, I know she's always been good at putting on graces and airs, but she seems totally different. She's talking about repenting for sin, and how she really sees that the High Sparrow's not who she thought he was. You can see she's a lot cleaned up. She's not like all dishevelled like she's been before. And Tommen is trying to say to her, "Oh, I was talking about you to the High Sparrow, about how good you are and what you do for the poor." And she just says, "Yes, I did all that stuff for the poor, but it didn't mean anything. I was just showing off." And she says, "But you've got to realise, the kind of person you are, and then repent for your sins." She even talks about Loras and how he's got a pure soul, but he's full of sin anyway, and he needs to repent. And you just basically get that impression where you go, "Oh no, she's been supping that Kool-Aid," just like the expression. And so we know that the plan was, for the last couple of weeks, a couple of weeks ago in the episodes, that Jaime was going to come with Mace Tyrell and the Tyrell army, and they were going to come by force, and they're going to make the High Sparrow listen, and they're going to take Margaery and Loras by force if they have to, so that she doesn't have to do the Walk of Atonement. And actually, I was, when you realise that Mace Tyrell is there, you're like, my god, it's the most commanding looking, and you're like, I can't wait to see this army come in here and kick some ass. Because I remember Lady Olenna said how she thought her son was useless, because in that family, I think the females are the power brokers. And so they come out from the side streets, both mounted on horses. They've got a whole lot of those Tyrell army, and they see the High Sparrow addressing the populace and talking about the Walk of Atonement and sin and all that stuff as usual. And you're kind of zoning out at this point, and Shame Nun's there, and you're like, oh, they're going to make her do it, but this isn't going to happen because Jaime's going to tell them off. And he comes and says, straight out threatens, "Give me Margaery and her brother. If you don't, I'm going to basically wage war on you." And all the armies lined up, and it really looks like the power is with Jaime. As you can see, they're already there, and the populace is there, and they're not really saying anything. And Jaime rides up to the top, and actually, I don't know, I mean, they've always had those sparrows there with those horrible looking clubs. They were there when Cersei did her walk, and actually see Lancel, and he's tooled up as well. I mean, all the players are there, and you're expecting, because it's all set out, that it's going to turn into this big war, and the High Sparrow has nothing to defend it against. And then he basically, what he looks for in the background, Tommen comes walking out, and he's got this big shit-eating grin on his face. And as Tommen, and what you see is, you think it's just the regular Kingsguard. Actually, if you look on the breastplates, it's the 7-pointed star. And I remember thinking, oh shit, they're legitimized because of him with the crown. And I'm wondering, is that actually Kingsguard put in that armour, or is it actually the High Sparrow's in the armour? And he declares that there will be no Walk of Atonement, that there's going to be a beautiful relationship between the Crown and the Faith, and that Margaery and Tommen are basically like the figureheads for it, and it's like this big marriage. And you see the look on Jaime's face because he didn't expect this to happen at all. And even Mace Tyrell says to his mother, "What's happening?" And she says, quite simply, "They've beaten us. The High Sparrow's beaten us." And in the next scene, you see Tommen on the Iron Throne and Jaime stripping off his armour. And Tommen's basically saying, "You've basically went against me, but you know what? You've served us faithfully, and I'm going to discharge you from the Kingsguard. But you can continue to serve me, but just not in this city." And Kit Van's just standing there, and even though he was involved in it, it kind of seems like he's enjoying the outcome, even though it was a failed outcome. And it cuts to this next scene, and actually what was most surprising is Jaime seems more like Cersei of the past. He's basically ranting about how they've stole our son, and I just want to go and get a bag of gold, get Bronn, and hire a great deal of killers, and we'll go in there and kill them all. And Cersei's being quite pragmatic and saying, "Don't worry, we'll get revenge and everything, but we're going to do it the right way. You go to the Riverlands just like Tommen wants you to do, and take back that stupid little castle because they're ours, and we're going to show our enemies and everything like that, and I'll have the mountain and he'll fight for me." And it ends with a kiss, and you're just kind of left going, Jesus, does that mean that Jaime is no longer a Kingsguard and he can actually lead the Lannister armies as the heir of Castle Rock? But we'll see about that. The next scenes that I've added in to do with this is to do with Walder Frey being brought back after 3 seasons. Now the timing of this is obviously to perpetuate this whole Tully storyline, and we'll get to see the Blackfish next week, which is fantastic. But you see Walder Frey, and he's basically pissed at his sons for not keeping the castle Tully, Riverrun, and how they've lost it to the Blackfish, and how they've got to get back there and get it back. And they bring in Edmure, and they say, "Oh, it's good to see you and everything, and don't worry, Edmure, we're taking you home." Basically, he's going to be used as a pawn, and this will be the first time we've been at Riverrun in ages. Now, the reason, I know I've brought this up before last year, but the fact that they're bringing him back, it makes me think that because they're bringing forward the Riverrun storyline that should have really happened around the time of the Red Wedding in season 3, that they might actually bring back another familiar face. Now, I'm not going to really get into it, but if it happens, it's going to be freaking good, y'all. So we return back to just outside Dothraki with Daenerys, and she's riding up front with Dario, and they're leading the Khalasar, and they're going to go back to Meereen. And at that point she stops the Khalasar and asks Dario, "How many ships am I going to need to get everybody over to Westeros?" And he calculates that with the Unsullied, the Dothraki, the Second Sons and everybody, it's going to take 1,000 ships. And he says nobody has 1,000 ships. And he questions her at one point and says, "Well, why do you want to go over there and just sit on an Iron Throne?" And she says, "Well, because that's what I want, that I'm just taking what's mine." And he says, "You're a conqueror, Daenerys Stormborn." And I think he's challenging her and maybe thinking, you're not going to be happy on the Iron Throne. And I think that tickles her a bit. And she looks ahead and she sees this gust of wind, and she decides to go off, and she says, "Just wait there a minute, I'm going to ride ahead." And he's waiting and waiting, and eventually he says, "I'm going to go look for her." And then just at that moment you hear the dragon screech, and you look up in the sky and you see Drogon above, and he's huge, his wings look magnificent, there's not got any holes in it from, remember when they got damaged when he was protecting Daenerys from the end of last season. And you see on her back, and you see it quite vaguely there, she's riding him. And she pulls up with Drogon, and he lands in front of the Khalasar, and all of the Khalasar look spooked, because obviously they've heard probably about this whole dragon thing, and they've probably seen is believing. And you see her riding on the back, and you see her, and she begins to address the Khalasar, and this is the speech that she gives. Every Khal who has ever lived has chose 3 blood riders to fight beside him and guard his way. But I am not a Khal. I will not choose 3 blood riders. I choose you all. I will ask more of you than any Khal has ever asked of his Khalasar. Will you ride the wooden horses across the black salt sea? Will you kill my enemies in their iron suits and tear down their stone houses? Will you give me the 7 kingdoms, the gift Khal Drogo promised me, before the mother of mountains? Are you with me, now and always? And they're all thumping their chest and raising their blades, and they're all for it and everything. And I loved it. And I know she's brought up this speech before many a time, but this is just to reinforce the fact that she's going to do it, and she's broke it down into really simple terms. Are you with me? This is what I want to do. We're going to do this. Are you going to help me do this? And that's what she's promised. And some people are going, oh, she's sounding a bit tyrannical. Is she going to end up like like Viserys? He was half mad. Or is she going to be worse and be like her father, Aerys Targaryen? And I know people think, oh, well, maybe it turns out maybe she's not the protagonist all along. Maybe she's the antagonist. Maybe she's going to go across and she's going to be another enemy for the people of Westeros and Jon Snow and everybody to have to fight because she's going to go batshit crazy. I don't believe that for a second, right? She's just speaking, if you listen to the words she's saying, she's reciting what Khal Drogo said, but also in a way that they could understand. Because in Dothraki, they don't want to cross the sea because they see anything that a horse can't travel across, they won't go. Because it's a poisonous salt sea, and salt water is poisonous if you drink it, so they break it down in that terms. And she calls them men in the iron suits because obviously they wear like grass and weaved sort of natural fibres because they don't believe in wearing heavy armour. And she mentions stone houses because they don't live in stone houses. They rarely have fixed buildings that they live in because they're a moving Khalasar. She's just reiterating what Khal Drogo promised, and the reason why she's saying that same speech is because it's something that they can understand, because she's broken it down into terms that they understand as. She's not speaking Westerosi to them, she's speaking like a Dothraki. And also, it was something Khal Drogo promised, but also something she wants. And she isn't the same girl that she was when she was with Khal Drogo because she needed him to do it. But she doesn't need Khal Drogo to fight her battles for her and take the 7 kingdoms. She can do it herself. Although I really miss Khal Drogo, and if you haven't seen, he's got an account on Instagram called Pride of Gypsies, that's his handle, and every time she does a really cool scene every week, like the burning of the cows, he's always right there support. He's got a screen capture of her and he's always saying really nice things. And he actually said in one of the screen captures for the Instagram, and he said, it's good to see everybody, I can't wait to see everybody over in Ireland and I miss you all. And I'm like, oh my god, is he going to be doing a cameo? Will he do a cameo this season, or maybe it's just a ruse? But I would love to see him come back, but that's neither here nor there. She is kick-ass, she's going to do it, she's just reaffirming what he said and what she said, so I'm all for it. So here we are with the penultimate scenes, and we're with Arya again in Braavos, and we actually get to see the second half of the play we saw from 2 episodes ago, where it reenacts Joffrey marrying Margaery and his poisoning. And the glaringly obvious thing is that Joffrey's character in the play is really sweet and naive and gullible and likeable, when we know completely different. And you see Tyrion bring him the cup, and as he starts to choke and die really flamboyantly but not horrifically like how we know it happened, you see that everybody else is looking really grim and sad, and Arya is just laughing and smiling and she's giggling, and at one point she has to actually stop herself because she feels bad doing so in front of everybody. And Lady Crane is holding Joffrey, the character, and she's saying how much she doesn't want to live in a world without her son, and how upset she is and what a beautiful boy he is. And she does such a fantastic job that Arya even feels, you can tell, emotional watching her. And as she's doing the scene, we see from this shot that Bianca, the one that plays Sansa, is miming every word, and you can see she's very covetous, right? And at the scene where Tyrion is killing his father, which I absolutely love because they actually use a line from the book about how Tyrion Lannister does not, he probably is so rich he shits gold. She goes in and she poisons the rum, and this part where you see her reflection in the very dull, cheap mirror, it reminds me of the whole Melisandre episode in episode 1 where you see her looking in the mirror before she ages. And as they all come out the back, you see Bianca, she's very covetous, and Richard E. Grant, who I thought was lovely in the last part of the episode where you saw him, he was very nice. He gets angry with Lady Crane because everybody likes seeing her and everybody was crap and they didn't enjoy the play or laugh when they should have laughed. And when she expresses how she wants to change stuff, he basically tells her, "What do you know?" and slags her off for saying, because she doesn't know anything in his eyes. And Arya comes in at that point just when Lady Crane's about to drink the poison wine, and she snatches it out of her hand and it smashes, and she points to Bianca and says, "I would be careful of that one, she wants you dead." Now, the thing about that is any one of them could probably want her dead. Even at that point, I'm thinking Richard E. Grant's character, the character that plays Robert Baratheon and Tywin Lannister, he could have wanted her dead, but at this point she's convinced it's Bianca. And as she leaves, you see the Waif has been there the entire time watching her. And obviously this was the test that she's obviously not passed. And Arya realises that she can't go back because she's screwed up. So she goes and pulls out the rocks and she pulls out Needle. And when we cut to Jaqen preparing another body and a face for the Hall of Faces, the Waif is so resplendently glib about the fact and happy that Arya failed. And he says, "That's a shame, she had promise. Just don't make her suffer." And she smiles and walks off. And you see Arya, she's in what looks like a bricked out tunnel or something. It's very dark in there, and she's got a little light, and she's got her needle, and she blows out the light, and you realise that when they were talking about blood, that like blood of my blood from the episode title, you realise that as much as she tries to be a faceless man, and I'm sure she could have been really good at it, her blood is really strong in her, the Stark blood. And at every turn, the last couple of episodes, between the Waif slagging her off and telling her that she's just Arya Stark, and she has this conversation with Lady Crane about how Cersei would be a lot angrier than sad at Joffrey dying because she would want to have revenge, and you can see that she's really thinking and talking about the past, and obviously probably thinking about the Red Wedding and what happened there. It's just the fact that I truly believe that the last few episodes were just reaffirming the fact that she can't get away from the fact that the wrongs have been done to her family, and as much as she wants to be a faceless man, she's got business. She's got Stark business. And there's some talk about what is the real test here. Now, even though she's been tasked to kill Lady Crane, the fact that she doesn't do it, I don't think it warrants death. Because really, she isn't even officially a faceless man, right? So her not doing it is just her not being able to go from apprentice to a full faceless man. But I think he is actually testing the Waif, because she has just been on Arya like white on rice. She keeps rubbing in the fact that she's not really no one, she never will be, because she's always going to be Arya Stark, the highborn lady from a highborn lord in Westeros. And when she finally comes to the realization that she can't kill someone that is innocent, Arya can't kill an innocent person, she gives up and decides to leave. And I think Jaqen always suspected it might turn that way, but he gave the Waif the impression that she can do what she's obviously been niggling Jaqen to do, is that she wants to kill Arya for not fulfilling the contract. But I think he always suspected that because the Waif is jealous and covetous, she's really not being a faceless man anymore. She's being more like a person with a grudge, and they're not supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be no one. They're not supposed to have those kind of thoughts and feelings, and that he's testing her against Arya, and obviously we want to see Arya win, and whether or not she kills the Waif, I personally can't stand the Waif. She's so annoying, and the way she's been towards Arya when she was trying so hard to be a faceless man. Now that you realise that Arya just wants to be Arya Stark and continue on and do what she's always wanted to do, I think Jaqen always knew she was never going to be a full faceless man, but he had a debt to her, and I think he wants to help her by training her, and I think surviving the Waif would be something that he would be proud of her for, and it would be like a baptism of fire type thing, that she went through all this stuff and she survived. She can go across and back to Westeros and do what we've always wanted to see her do, is knock off more names on that list. We come to the final scenes, and these are my favourite actually, and it's set beyond the wall with Bran, and where we left him off is Meera's dragging him on the sled, but he's still stuck in the vision he was in with the Three-Eyed Raven. Now the Three-Eyed Raven died, but the information, whatever that started doing, is still happening to him without the Three-Eyed Raven there, and it's like he's being bombarded with all these images, and you're basically seeing it being chaotic in his mind, and you see a whole slew from the dragon shadow over Westeros, Daenerys and the birth of the dragons, cutting to the White Walkers and them creating more White Walkers from Craster's sons. You see the scenes at Hardhome. You don't see Jon, but you see the scenes with the Night King. You see the Red Wedding with Catelyn dying. You see Bran falling from the tower in episode 1. You see his father being executed. You see young Ned from the Tower of Joy saying, "Where's my sister?" And in amongst it, it's only a few seconds, you see a hand, a bloody hand, and a female hand, and I assume that is Lyanna's death because she died in a bed of blood. That's how Ned found her, in the Tower of Joy. I think we're probably going to see more of that later on. You see Robb being killed at the Red Wedding, but the parts that we haven't seen is something that's a revelation, is we get to see Aerys, and in it he's sitting on the throne and he's shouting, "Burn them all." And the scenes that you've just seen, they keep going on a loop. I counted at least 3 times, I think it happens, and you see Aerys saying "kill them all," and it zooms in on his face. He hasn't got the beard that we all kind of suspected, because that's how he's described in certain artwork shows him, and you see Jaime killing him, stabbing him in the back. And then it cuts to Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne. Now that is canon, that's what happened to Aerys. When Jaime killed him, after he killed him and he's lying at the foot of the Iron Throne, he gets up and he's sitting in the chair. Now I did a video at the beginning of the week, it was just a short video, and you can watch that, and that breaks down the scene much more, just the Aerys scene. And what was really interesting is you see Meera holding on to Bran, and she's desperate and she's being really affectionate, and she's saying, "I'm so sorry," and obviously it's because she can't protect him and they're being overrun. The Whites are coming for them. And just when you think all is lost, this rider on a black horse comes through and he's swinging what you get, you know, the incense sort of what they swing in religious ceremonies. I can't remember the name of it, and it's full of fire, and this rider's using it to hit the White Walkers, the Whites, and they're all set on fire. It cuts to later on, and the faceless shadowy man in black is killing a rabbit and pouring the blood into a cup to give to Meera and Bran to warm them up. And when Bran wakes up, he looks across and he asks, "Who are you?" And the man takes off his hood and his cowl, I should say, and his facial mask, and you see that it's Uncle Benjen. And that's when Benjen reveals that yes, just like Jon said, he went north of the wall for a raiding party to look for Whites and White Walkers, and he came across one and he was stabbed in the gut, and he looked like he was done for. But the children of the Forest came to him and they helped him, and he says, "They saved me just like how you saw what they did," you know, alluding to the White Walkers and how they were created. They shoved a piece of dragon glass into his heart and it stopped him from becoming a full White Walker. And you actually see his hands are kind of blackish. They don't really show close up, but he's basically between alive and being a white, and he survived. And he basically says, I was called by the three-eyed raven, and even though he's dead, the three-eyed raven lives again through Bran, and that he's going to help him because he needs to get south of the wall, and that he needs to be ready for when the Night King approaches. And Bran's like, I'm not ready, I don't know what to do, I'm not ready. And he says, don't worry, you will be, because when the White Walkers come and the Night King comes, you're going to be there and you're going to fight them. Sorry for my voice. But I was so relieved to have a Stark back. Now, whether or not you're a book reader, there's a character in the books called Cold Hands, and basically what you see is partly what makes the character in the books. Cold Hands rides a big elk, and he's a lot more deteriorated, and he is, in the books, he helps Bran and Meera and Jojen get to the three-eyed raven. That didn't happen, they changed that. But although he hasn't been called Cold Hands so far, I think it's just basically taking part of that character from the books and making it so that someone familiar is important, because you want to be able to say, well, why would a stranger come along and save Bran and Meera? And he's not a stranger. And in the show, and I'm a book reader, but I'm not really bothered about canon and all of that. I know a lot of people are getting all down on it. Oh, it's all different from the books. Whatever, man. I keep saying it every week. It's only based on adapted from the books, alright? It's changes. You just have to go with it. Quit bitching. Just watch it. It all comes to an end at some point. It's all leading up to the main point or whatever, and how it's going to end. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked seeing Benjen come back, because he was only really in it in up to, what was it, episode 2, episode 3? He hasn't been on the show for 6 years. And we're basically talking almost 3 years ago in the storyline for the show. It's been 3 years since the start of when Robert came to Winterfell with the whole of King's Landing's on, and all his entourage. But having Benjen coming back is a nice thing. I don't know if he's going to come south of the wall with them, and I'm still unsure about the mark that the Night's King put on Bran, and if he goes beyond the wall, does that cancel out the magic for that? We don't really know, but I really like seeing return of familiar faces. We've had 2 returns of familiar faces. We've had Walder Frey come back, and we've had Benjen Stark. Now, I really like the fact that both of them came back, because they're both a good guy and a bad guy have came back into the show, and it's a real mix. And this whole thing about blood of my blood, it's another thing where Stark's blood is being reunited with another Stark blood. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope you're all enjoying it too. Final thoughts on the episode. I think it was a really good episode. I loved all the Stark scenes. I loved Gilly and Sam. I loved seeing Hornhill. I don't know if we're going to see much more from that, but I would like it either way. The Daenerys storyline, I just love anything where she's riding on the dragons, and hopefully the next episode's going to be even better, because I'm kind of wanting to see her come back triumphant to Meereen. I want to let the other 2 dragons out and let them, stretch their wings out. And although I didn't like how the King's Landing storyline didn't go the way I expected it to go, it was a good twist. And obviously we're going to see what happens with Cersei and the Mountain, or aka Robert Strong, and the trial by combat, because that's how I think it's going to turn around. But in the next episode, I'm so looking forward to seeing another return of another character we haven't seen in a long time, is the Blackfish and Riverrun and that storyline. And we know that Brienne and Pod are going to be there too, and hopefully we'll see, and we will see actually, because I remember from the trailer, we will see Jon Snow and Sansa trying to rally support with the other houses that haven't declared for Ramsay. And so it's been a really good build up, and I think because they've released the names of the episode 9 I think is called Battle of the Bastards, and obviously that's where Bastard Bowl is going to happen. And Episode 9 is always an episode where there's usually a shock. That's when episode 9 in season 1 we saw Ned dying, and episode 9 in season 3 was when the Red Wedding happened. So I think there's going to be something popping up this season that's going to happen. Maybe another shock twist. Hopefully it's not going to be like Jon Snow kind of twist. I think that because they're bringing in Riverrun and Walder Frey, that there's something else that has been in the books that hasn't came up, and this is the right time to bring it up. I'll hopefully talk about it more in another video if it comes to pass. Overall, I'd give the episode, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. There's room for improvement. Like I said, the King's Landing storyline kind of fell a bit flat for me. Cersei, I think, was underused. I really want to see her being raging bitch and going nuts. So far we're seeing Jaime being really angry and wanting to go out and kill everybody. And we'll see a return of Bran in the next episode, and I can't wait for that. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I'm sorry I keep pumping them out so late. It's just this freaking virus, man. It's taking forever to get better with, and the amount of times I have to keep stopping and starting to do the review. But thanks for sticking with me. Enjoy it. I hope you liked the video. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.